Right. Let me introduce our guest without any further ado. He is the assistant principal percussionist with the Oregon Symphony. He's an alum of Florida State University, New England Conservatory, the New World Symphony. I have two of those places in common with him. And he's the most handsome guy in his orchestra by far, Mr. Stephen Kehner. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much, Ted. It's great to be here. Talk to you guys.
Yeah, man. Thanks for doing it. All right, so let's get some of the EPL questions out of the way first. We see the Liverpool jersey. Well, let's get technical. Who is the best attacking right back in the English Premier League, and why is it Trent Alexander-Arnold?
That's actually Trent Alexander-Arnold's jersey right
Of
there.
course it is.
It's got his name and number on the back of it. It's got to be. No one is putting up the attacking numbers that he is, and he's very young, 22 years old, I think now. Whole career ahead of him. It's a bright future.
That's outrageous. I
Exciting.
didn't know he was only 22.
Yeah, yeah, he's top of the game already, being that young.
He was kind of he had a kind of a bad run of form last season, and then I picked him up in our fantasy draft, maybe in the fourth round. Kind of an amazing pick on my part. Other questions would be, why do you keep stealing all the players that I drop, like Tariq Lamptey, who has potential to be one of England's right backs in the future?
Well, I would say that I would say to everybody, all of our guests here, that you'll find that it's a really good way to get better at what you're doing is to copy those who technique that I'm employing. So just following your lead there.
Unbelievable. I take the blame for that. By the way, Peter has chimed in. Emerson Royale is better than Trent Alexander-Arnold,
Ooh.
which I was going to pose that myself. So Peter, thank you. Come on, you Spurs.
Mm.
Uh, yeah, and I should also mention that Steven joined our fantasy league. Was it 2 seasons ago, and won straight away, in spite of the fact that he knows almost nothing about soccer, nothing. But he
Yeah.
just study. He's a quick study, and now he seems to be the most knowledgeable guy on the West Coast regarding fantasy football, and he's competitive this year again. It's kind of upsetting, but you are stealing all of my players.
Well, I'll tell you what happened is that during COVID times, I found that I had a newborn at home and I was waking up pretty early in the mornings. And those of you familiar with the English Premier League know that because of the time difference, those games kick off pretty early, 4, 7, 6 a.m., things like that. And I was usually awake when those games were kicking off. So
Yeah.
in between diaper changes and bottle feeds and all of that stuff, I was like, yep, throw the game on and see what's going. And I just, just totally fell for it, and I'm a huge fan now and follow it all the time. And yeah, so that's kind of
It
what.
worked well for your current lifestyle.
Yes.
And it's also what I find is good about it. And if anyone said, "Oh, this is good," we've got Casey Cangelosi coming in here. This is going to be good. Let's continue this conversation uh, because I think the person just entering the room has a lot to say about this. Mr. Casey Cangelosi, how are you? Can you unmute yourself and say hello to us?
Hey, what's up, Teddy?
Hey, Casey, how you doing? Listen, we're talking
Hey,
we're talking English Premier League. Do you know what the acronym COYS stands for?
COYS. It's some tambourine code or orchestral thing that you only tell each other.
That's a very good guess.
I
It
knew
it
it.
actually stands for Come On You Spurs. Are you an English Premier League fan?
Is this boxing or what is this? I don't know. Spurs? It's boxing,
Boxing.
right?
Yeah, it's boxing.
I
Yeah.
thought so. I thought so.
Yeah.
I'm so
Casey,
glad
how
I
you
came.
doing?
I'm so glad I popped in.
Me too. I'm
I was
I'm
on
thrilled that you're here.
I was worried I was going to learn something for a minute, so I'm glad it's
No, no, don't fear. That there's nothing no boundaries of ignorance being pushed back here. Don't worry about it.
oh, this is cool. It's good to see you, buddy.
Good to see you. Well, we can't see you, but if you ever decide to turn on your camera, we'd
I
love to
know.
see you.
Maybe
But thanks
later.
for
Maybe later. We'll
you
see.
got to do your hair.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. We're talking about soccer right now, and so far no one's left the room. Although I bet Monica is yawning right now. And hey, welcome Eddie, Kevin, Peter, Adam, and Josh Vonderheide. Hey, man, we've got more Music Academy alums. Hey, let's jump into some percussion talk. When did you join the Oregon Symphony, Stephen? What year was that?
So the audition was February 2020 and March 2020. So I was meant to start in September of that year and didn't start. So I really kind of started this season, September 2021. So it's been, 5 months or so since I started the gig.
So you win the gig, and then we have a global pandemic. Just to throw a small complication in there.
Right. Pretty much
What's
immediately.
unbelievable? What has the scene been like since you started playing?
It's been great. They did a really good job kind of planning. It's a big anniversary, 25th anniversary for the Oregon Symphony. And so they did a really good job planning some really big rep. We started off the season with Mahler 2, full choir, whole thing. And they've done just a really good job, I think, of, the requirements and things like that make it safe for us to go back to work have all been really effective. We really haven't had to cancel anything. We really haven't had any major issues like that. We have conductor issues every now and then. Somebody can't. But for the most part, it's been very smooth so far. So, knock on wood that'll continue. But yeah, man, I mean, we just played Image, the complete Image last week, and Shostakovich Violin Concerto with our new resident artist, Simona Lansma. And then next week, it's Sibelius 1 and Ravel Piano Concerto. We're right in the thick of it. So
That's great. Well, knock on wood. Let's hope it continues because, yeah, we're all trying to figure out what this next wave is about. And man, everyone is just sick of talking about it, and there's total fatigue, and yet we have kind of a problem. So hopefully we'll get out of it soon. Hey,
yeah.
tell us about your audition experiences. Obviously, we know you won New World, which, if you ask me, is a job. You took a lot of auditions. I also remember you as being sort of like the scorekeeper. Like you had all the stats on who was in the finals, who got cut, and how did you get that? How did you take up that mantle? And I imagine it was because you just took a ton of auditions and you kind of figured out like, all right, I need to know what's going on.
Yeah. No, that's totally it. I did, like you said, I did my undergrad at Florida State. And any of you are program with John Parks, awesome percussion department, super
I've
high
heard of that.
level.
I've heard of him.
Yeah. He's pretty notorious.
He is.
And
He's famous.
yeah, but being down in Tallahassee, where the school is, geographically and just culturally, is very separate from the whole orchestra scene in the whole, nationally. So when I was that age and I was getting ready to audition for grad schools to figure out what I wanted to do, I didn't really know anything about professional audition taking, and I found we all remember the old website My Auditions. That I don't think exists anymore, unfortunately. But I found that, and there was a way that you could see what was happening at auditions. And so at that time, that was the era of and the Matt McKays and the Kyle Brightwells and Michael Roberts, now my colleague. Those were the people who were winning all the jobs at that time. I was like, okay, go on Google or Facebook or whatever. Let's figure out who these guys are. Turns out they all went to school in Boston. And I said, okay, I think it's pretty clear. Like, I think I need to go there if I want to do this orchestra thing. So I auditioned at both NEC and BU. Great experience just visiting NEC and meeting Will and Dan and Frank and everyone there. And it was like, okay, this is where I want to go. So that's how I ended up kind of on that path. But yeah, knowing who was in the game and where they went to school and what kind of things they were doing was very important to me, just because I wasn't in that world. I was at FSU is just a different world, much, bigger focus on teaching and chamber music and things like that. So,
And your research told you should probably go to school in Boston if you wanted to win a job.
yeah. And I think that changes, that like, from time to time, or different, schools get kind of hot and they have a big streak of a lot of players, coming out and winning. And yeah, at that time, I mean, it was sort of unrivaled. I like, I may be biased, but I mean, it was, Matt and Kyle won their jobs in Boston, kind of Joe Becker. I mean, it was, yeah,
Yeah, George Nixon. There was a run there of
yeah.
where it just seemed like you just had to walk through the door of Will's percussion studio and you could win a job.
Yeah, there was something magical happening for sure. So I knew I needed to get on that.
I know how important Will was for me, but he clearly got you up to speed quickly because, studying at FSU, you mentioned that it was not like an orchestrally minded school, an audition school. So it was it like within a year you were ready to take festival auditions and things like that?
Sort of, yeah. Well, I actually, when I got to NEC, started my master's, I was in Dan Bausch's studio coming in, and that actually turned out to be great because I didn't know Dan or Will, and I was perfectly happy with them. So, both of them playing the BSO, that's good enough for me,
Yeah.
So I was like, okay. So, and Dan having, playing timpani in his job also was really big. I think we kind of started at square one with timpani and with snare drum technique as well. We were doing a lot of Morello and Moeller exercises and things like that. Just so that whole first year actually of my master's, I didn't take any auditions. I was kind of deep in like, I need to rework my technique and I need to learn the repertoire. I knew the basic excerpts, but I didn't know all of or uncommon ones and things like that.
Yeah.
So then my second year of my master's was like, okay, suddenly this degree is almost over, so I better get to it. So then I really dove in and took everything that I could, festivals and regional orchestras and anything that came up I was pretty much taking at that point. And then I stayed at NEC for an extra year and switched to Will. So that is kind of what I would point to, is that's when things really took off was switching over there, and my master's was done. No more classes, no more this and that. It's just full practicing, rep class, playing an orchestra, gigging around town, whatever. There's lots of that in Boston that you can get into. And so that's really, and then at the end of that year is when I won my New World spot. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And how long were you in New World for?
New World was 3 years for me.
Wow, man. And you
Um,
made it through to the other side.
yeah, I wasn't sure for a few minutes there. I wasn't
Yeah.
quite sure, but it's also a very, very, very special place to me. I loved my time there. Definitely had its ups and downs. It's a very intense environment. If any of you guys are interested in New World Symphony, or going to audition or have auditioned, yeah, it's, if you need kind of a bridge from school to professional life, that's exactly what it is. And it was very effective in that way for me, because it really is a job. You're really, 35, 36 weeks a year, you're playing in a really high level orchestra, and you're getting great coaches coming down, and Will came down, and you have Mike Werner and all sorts of great people coming in to help teach, which is big too.
My take on New World was that you really had to balance. I mean, because you're in Miami Beach and you're around all these other post college students that are sort of looking around, going, "This could be really fun," and you sort of have to figure out how to balance the business and pleasure.
Yeah.
Because I think we've kind of seen people that that were New World that maybe fell into the Miami Beach lifestyle, and I always felt like, I mean, for me, I was there for like 2.5 months just because of the timing of my auditions, and I felt kind of fortunate that I was able to leave, because I thought, if I'm there for 3 years, I don't know what's going to happen. But you made it, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I think, yeah, it was, I mean, everybody there is pretty dedicated. It's fairly rare, especially these days, I think that people come in and kind of disappear into the landscape of Miami Beach, never
The
to be
the
heard
night
from
the
again.
nightclub on Seventh
Right.
Street. Yeah, yeah,
That doesn't happen maybe as much as it used to. I don't know, but people are very, very dedicated, and part of it is that that it's kind of a short-term thing.
yeah.
That it's going to end, and there's definitely a kind of collective fear, among the whole orchestra. Everybody's in that same position,
Yeah. So you
and
have to stay motivated.
Yeah, there's a fun tradition there of people throwing a kegger for the orchestra when they win their job. And so that's kind of always happening too. Like there's always a party at the pool or this or that happening for somebody who, won a big job and which is really fun and really cool to be in that environment. But at the same time, if that's not happening to you, it's a little, what's going to happen to me when if I get to the end of so I actually was coming to the end of my third year and nothing had panned out. And so I was making plans for, okay, what am I going to do? Where am I going to move? I don't own any instruments. I need instruments, kind of all these questions. And luckily, about a month, I think, before my fellowship ended, I won a 1-year spot with the Utah Symphony, just as a temporary contract. And that was another thing that was just perfect timing, right place, right time. Because like I said, yeah, I really wasn't sure what was going to happen or what I was going to do, and that kind of came along at the perfect time for me. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And Oregon now. And the question from Instagram related to what you were talking about when you were at NEC and starting to take auditions. What was your practice routine like when you were taking lots of auditions? I mean, you mentioned you started doing some kind of hand work with Dan Bausch, but then you got into learning the repertoire, and what you must have ramped up your practice routine a whole lot from where you'd been.
Yeah, definitely. I felt like, especially in grad school at NEC, it was, and this is very much a culture of that school as well, is that it's difficult to find an open practice room there. People are kind of always practicing. And so you kind of sink or swim. You either jump into that or, left on the wayside. So I think in those days it was just throwing hours and work and just really, really, just trying to spend as much time as I could in the building and as much time as I could in the practice room behind the instruments. It wasn't until later, I think maybe towards the end of my time as a grad student, that I first heard of the idea of kind of planning your practice time, like your preparation, like actually having a plan for what you're going to do.
What's that all about? Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, maybe I should do that, because what I was doing was just like, okay, the audition was posted, practice as many hours as possible from now until the audition day.
Yeah.
It's like, it's funny looking back on it, because it's just a ridiculous, concept. There's no structure, no plan, nothing, just work really hard, not lazy, but just unorganized, just throwing brute force at something.
But you changed your game, and you were a morning practice guy, from what I understand. My sources tell me.
Yeah. Yeah, I did practice in the mornings for sure. I was definitely never, there was people who were late night practicers who were, up in there, like when the building was locked and closed and getting locked in and things like that. That was
not you. Yeah.
It was 10, 11, getting up to midnight. I was like, I'm done. I can't, do this going into the late hours in the morning. That's not for me. Cause the way downhill, and it just basically undoing good work that I had done earlier in the day. There's no need for that. So I realized that pretty early on.
So what was your plan, the practice plan? Give us an example of what some of those things would be.
Yeah. So, I think I want to actually probably should give credit to Ed Steffen, because he would have been the first person to introduce me to that. And he did a master class at NEC close to the end of my time there. And so that would have been the first time I heard of this. Ed's a big cyclist. That's pretty well known. Distance, like big racer, like cycling races. And so he kind of just took the cycling, the regimen that you would use to like prepare for a race, and just like applied it to his audition taking. And he had pretty amazing results with it. And so he was kind of just sharing that process. And basically it was just breaking down your preparation into segments, and starting with like a fundamentals, like a basics, a good few weeks, a month even, of just fundamentals, no repertoire. And then getting into repertoire really slowly. And then this idea at the end of tapering, where you actually kind of come down from the hours and the intensity, and you're practicing less, and maybe you're just doing, 1 or 2 mock auditions a day and then calling it after home. And I definitely found that was a big one, the tapering at the end of the process for me, because like I said, I was just playing as many hours as I could. So like night before my flight, I'm doing 10 hours. there's at that point, it is what it is. You're not going to improve anything the day before you fly to go play your audition.
Yeah.
So the tapering at the end and really focusing in on just playing mock auditions and kind of, also looking out for your health and sleeping and like, not staying up super late and working yourself, into the ground. All of that stuff was, I think that unlocked a new level for me. Because I wasn't doing that at all. I was just doing as much as possible. This idea that like, well, whoever practices the most hours wins. Like, no.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of amazing. You mentioned Ed Steffen and this sports comparison to building a plan based on like cyclists and how they have a very specific plan. Like I used to run marathons. There was a plan you follow, and somehow most percussionists, and I would say most young musicians, have never been tutored on how to practice. And I sometimes wonder and ask you, are educators letting young musicians down in this way? I mean, I spent years not knowing how to practice and figured it out, but also one of the advantages of a place like NEC, same thing for me. I was learning from my fellow students who were doing stuff in a much more organized way.
Yeah, definitely. And I got a lot of, I wouldn't, yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I wouldn't say that I didn't know how to practice. And I would think a lot of people at NAC knew how to practice, like coming out of undergrad and having a lot of tools about how to use a metronome. Don't just put it on quarters, change it up, use full subdivision or put it on big beats or off beats, things like that. Self-recording, listening back, all of that was there and was happening. But it was just the structure of like having, a dedicated time just for fundamentals, a dedicated time for, building the repertoire up, slow up to performance tempo, a dedicated time for mock auditions and rest, like just all of that was, I think you're right that it's, when we're getting to this like kind of almost Olympic level of audition taking that is necessary, I think that's totally something that should be taught more, or there's many ways to do it, and that's just one way, but there's definitely in conservatories and at New World an attitude of like just sheer work and hours like will get you there. And I don't think that's the case.
Yeah. It's fascinating to me how the lists have become so much more note heavy, even in the last like 20 years. And I do feel like if you're not organized in terms of learning all this new material, of which every audition seems to have some new material, there's really no way you can get all those notes learned.
Yeah. Yep. And my process would be, and I would recommend this to any of you guys, even though I would start at the beginning with like a month of fundamentals, if there was something like a Bach or a contemporary marimba solo or some crazy xylophone lick that I didn't know, I would definitely start on that on day one, super slow. But the difference was not hammering Porgy on day one. It's like, all right, I know that one. Like, I don't need to do that until, 5 weeks from now or a few weeks out from the audition. There'll be plenty of time to get that one up and running. So that gives me more time to spend on, these crazy things that get posted, the Harry Potters and the, all of that stuff. So I definitely would start on that right away because that just takes a long time.
And I know that you're a good sight reader, and obviously you went through a lot of music while you were at FSU. How important is being a good sight reader? I mean, I guess how important is it to be able to read music, and especially like on your job? Because I think there's this misconception. It's like I don't need to sight read. They'll give me the music in advance. I can learn it all.
Right. Yeah. No. I feel like I learned the importance of sight reading probably while trying to get into Tanglewood. Honestly, because sight reading was always on. I don't know if it still is, but it was always on the Tanglewood TMC auditions, and it would always be some crazy thing out of like a violin etude book that was like basically unplayable, and they would just put you in front of a marimba and give you like 30 seconds and then go, okay, go. And that, so the first time I had to do that was, pretty shocking. I was like, okay, but then the, For most people, I will say that it takes more than one try to get into Tanglewood. It took me several. But that was something that the next year I was like, okay, I need to practice that. I need to learn how to get better at that, because that's obviously going to be there, and I'm never going to get in if I just blow it on the sight reading. So I need to figure that out. And so I would actually do that a lot with some of my friends and peers in the studio. We would have violin books or things laying around, and we would walk into somebody's room and pick it up and go open it to a random page and go, ready, set, go. And some of those guys that I was in school with, man, were unbelievable at it. And they would play it, and not only would it be pretty accurate, but also very musical. Yeah. I remember Brian Maloney was one of my colleagues, one of my, friends and peers in the NEC studio. And he would make sure to roll all of the long notes, and they would have different roll speeds and be very expressive. And I was like, that sounds like you worked on that, and you literally just opened it up and looked at it, in under a minute. And so I just realized I needed to incorporate a lot more of that. And yeah, there's really no substitute for, you just have to do it. It's uncomfortable, and it sucks, and it makes you feel bad about your playing because it's not going well. But at the same time, like, you have to just put in the time to do it, to get better at it.
So your practice routine included some sight reading in order to get into Tanglewood. How many times did you audition for Tanglewood?
It was at least 3, maybe 4. Yeah.
You blocked one of them out.
Yeah. Yeah. No, there were definitely some rough ones. But yeah, I mean, I always found that to be the case. Like, as soon as I got to grad school and I wanted to do the festivals, it was like audition for all of them every year, and like hope you get into one, and then do it again the next year and hope you get into another one. There's just so many students and a limited number of spots. So
I didn't know that about you, but it's always refreshing to hear that someone that's achieved as much as you have, has failed as many times. But I think that's part of your success. And my next question is, how many professional auditions did you take?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. And I it was funny when at some point while in the midst of taking all these auditions, I would hear these kinds of stories from people like, oh yeah, well that guy, that was his second audition, or won his first audition. It's very rare that happens, but it does. And then, you can't help but going, oh, well, it's my 17th audition. So I must be, something's wrong with me, or maybe maybe I can't do this. Yeah. All of that stuff kind of creeps in, and it doesn't help at all. In fact, it makes it even harder. So at some point early on, I was like, you know what? I'm not going to count. I don't want to know. I know I've taken a lot, and I don't know how many there are. And, maybe one day if I win one, I'll go back and see if I can remember how many I took. So I and then I never really thought about it again. And then, the Oregon audition happened in February, like almost 2 years ago. And I think, the next day after I woke up, I was like, oh yeah, how many auditions did I take? Like, I never counted, And so I did. I went back, and I had I'm a pretty good record keeper. I like to write down what pieces I've played in orchestra and conductors that I've worked under, and what part I played, and what audition I took, and how far I got. All of that stuff. I just have just a document where you just keep up with it as you go, because it's so much that you'll never remember all of it. Right. So yeah, I did. I went back and counted, and it was 35 auditions. Which, and I was counting, I didn't count like festival auditions. It was just like professional, full-time jobs. And I did count New World in there, which I had to take more than once as well. Yeah. And like I said, I do think it counts, because you have to move to Miami, and it's a full season, and it's, even though it's not an ICSOM professional orchestra or whatever. So I had to take that one more than once. So there were a couple wins in there, like 1 year, and then the Oregon audition. So, less than 10% were successful. And I think you're totally right that, that's all. To me, it's another thing that doesn't get talked about enough in music schools or in these circles, is that failure is completely normal, and everybody fail. That's how you become successful, is by failing. There's a great Michael Jordan quote that I repeat all the time and that I love, which is he says something to the effect of 25 times I've been trusted with the last shot of the game to win the game for my team, and I missed. You know, I was, 6,000 shots or whatever in my career that didn't go in. All these like kind of statistics that he's like, these are all the times that I failed, and because of that, that's why I succeed.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, okay, that's like, the GOAT, that's Michael Jordan. Like, and he's talking about like, you all see the highlight reels of all the amazing things that I did to win games for my team. And like, what you don't see is all the times that didn't happen. And I was, broken and shattered and felt terrible. And that's all part of the journey to get to be successful. So that's always something I like to shout out. It's just that it's like, nobody goes into this and comes out on the other side like, totally unscathed from failure. It just doesn't happen.
Well, and if you watch The Last Dance, you can tell that Michael Jordan's still pissed off about all those shots he missed. He's like, he still wants to get back out there. And
Totally.
and our stats are the success numbers are much less than, a good basketball player might shoot, 48, 50% if they're really having a good season.
Yeah.
If we're shooting, you shot 10%. And look where you are. I mean, you basically need a teacher who's also like an expert psychologist who can talk you off the ledge every time. And I actually wonder if that's one of Will's, great secrets. And obviously, it's not much of a secret, but
Yeah.
I mean, he was the first person that gave me the confidence that I might belong in an orchestra, that I might actually be a person that could win a job. And before that, I was going, no, I'm not ready to take auditions. And you go, no, you're ready. Go ahead.
Yeah.
And I imagine he was that for you as well.
Definitely. Yeah, no, I think it's absolutely key when you're kind of starting off on this path, for there to be somebody in, who's done it, who goes like, you can do this. Because it's, at least for me, I was like, and maybe that's, again, like coming from not orchestra world, not a conservatory. I just didn't know the level. I didn't know how I stacked up. I got into NEC, so I was like, okay, that's a good sign. Yeah. But aside from that, like I don't really know. And then you show up to school. Another funny, kind of ironic thing is that I think it was 2 months into me starting my master's is when Michael Roberts won his job here in Oregon. And he had just come back to NEC at that time. So it was like, I was literally at NEC for like 8 weeks, and there was like a guy coming back job. And I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
That totally blew my mind. I wanted to pick his brain about everything, like how did, it was just, I had no idea how anyone did that.
And now you have a whole career to pick his brain.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's kind of wild, like how that worked out. And I'm now playing his job that he won because he's now the principal.
Right.
Anyway, yeah, it's just, I think it's like you said, it's super important to have a teacher who's like, talking you off the ledge, like you said. Just it's, you can do this. Will's thing that I always appreciated was he had this analogy that like you're building your mountain, you're climbing your mountain.
Yeah.
And it's just like, even if you went to one, maybe you advanced but didn't make the finals or something, you come back and he said, it's okay, man, you're climbing your mountain, you're on your way. Like, just always thinking of it as you're going forward, don't think of it as a step back. And then towards the end, as I was getting more and more competitive, he was also saying things like, you just need to find your committee. You're playing, the level is there, like you can win playing at this level. But now it's about like, you need to find the group of people that appreciate your playing and relate to it and want it to be part of their ensemble, which is another thing I hadn't thought of. I was just like, it's a rude awakening when you don't realize that they're not all like the same, that not all auditions are judged the same way. But they're run by people and not all people are the same. So it's kind of a funny thing looking back, is like, I think the first real big audition I took was the San Diego Symphony, and I made the semis, and I was like feeling great about myself. Wow. First big one, I advanced. Huge. I played terrible in the semis. I don't think I finished the round. It was awful.
Yeah.
And I was like, yes, like I got through. And then the very next one I took was like the Navy band auditions as well during those years. And I was like going into that one like, yeah, like I'm gonna win this one, no problem. You know, this is the Navy band. Like I just advanced at San Diego, like thinking I'm like, you know, totally hot or something. And I just immediately got cut. Thought I played great, just didn't understand it at all. And it was like, it threw my world upside down. I was like, I don't, this other audition, like what is it just was totally did not compute at all.
Yeah.
And so that was like a lesson that I just kept learning over and over again until I got to a place where it was like, no, each one of these things is a separate event. They're not related to each other. They're not, nothing, you know, nothing about that is, you can think of them in your own path. Like I did this really well at the last one and I want to carry that to my next one. And I'm building, like we talked about building the mountain thing.
Yeah.
But as far as like the results of who wins, it's not related at all. And that was something I did not understand at the beginning, for sure.
You had like an expectation of like, well, now I've proven that I'm supposed to win this one. And then you realize you still have to play the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No one's just going to hand it to you because you did something good at the last one. That's not how that works.
Did you start making some, you know, over 35 auditions? Obviously, you're going to make adjustments, but you know, what can you think of some of those things that were different about you winning Oregon that were, you know, not there when you were taking the Navy band, your second audition?
Yeah. Well, the nice thing about making like a preparation plan when you take these things is that then you have something to adjust. Like when you did a process, you know, maybe it worked, maybe it didn't, but then you have something to go off of, you know. So I might sometimes, you know, I would go and I would feel really, really good about like the new rep that I had to learn, you know, the modern marimba or mallet things or whatever, snare drum solo, and be like, oh, you know, I'm really good at that. And then I would go to the prelim, Porgy and Kiji, and I would get cut, you know, and then I would go, okay, you know, like I was playing all that hard stuff really well, but I forgot, you know, I didn't spend enough time on the standards. And then, you know, that's what in the prelims, and it wasn't up to par. So then that's an adjustment to, you know, okay, I need to make sure that that base is covered. And then as it got on more and as I did them more and more, I noticed myself spending more time in the zone, like just making sure sounds were good, like rolls and rhythm, you know, just making sure, and all my equipment, making sure all my instruments were sounding good, things like that, you know, changing your drum head, like regularly, just like literally stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then so spend also more time at the end with the tapering and the mock auditions and stuff. Like, oh, that like a week, sometimes it got to be like, oh, just a week of that is not enough. Like I should expand that out to 2 weeks. You know, I should get everything to performance tempo 2 to 3 weeks in advance, and then spend 2 weeks playing mock auditions for people and recording myself and things like that before the audition. So there were definitely tweaks like that could make, that when I was just playing as many hours as possible for as many days as possible in a row, like there's nothing to adjust. There's nothing to learn when that's the mode you're in. So
yeah, and the other thing about building the mountain, as you said, is it's not only the audition experience, but it's all that preparation time put in.
Yes.
So coming back to the next audition, there's probably 1 or 2 more pieces of repertoire that now you've already worked up.
Yeah.
So now that comes together. So every time you're preparing for an audition, whatever the outcome is, there's something learned there.
Yes. Yeah, totally. I think it was a key, another key thing to unlock, which for this one, for everything, I should have better, should give better credit, because everything that I say like came from somewhere, you know, and
That's okay.
This one came from Tom Sherwood, who's a really positive influence on me during my New World years, and sort of helping me to learn how to detach myself from the result of the audition was really, really important. And it's part of
when
that,
you're
like,
when you're auditioning.
yeah, like you what you gain from it, and the experience of going through the preparation and getting yourself up to the highest level of playing that you possibly can. That is your goal. That is your accomplishment if you're able to do that. If you go and play a really great round, a really great representation of my playing and my skills. And I really wouldn't change anything about the way that I played, then that's like success. You did
Yeah.
it. No matter what, no matter if you won it or you didn't win it, or you got cut in the prelims or you got to the finals and then you didn't get it, or whatever the case may be. Just like having that be the focus and that be the driving factor, rather than like what did somebody else tell me, about my playing. Like, no, like it's all from internal. Like, in whatever anybody's assessment of it is that's fine. That's their assessment, and obviously they're there to pick their next colleague, and that's what they have to do. And but just learning to not be so overly focused and just
Focus on the performance and not the outcome.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. Yeah, you're talking about Tom Sherwood, who plays in the Cleveland Orchestra and was principal in the Atlanta Symphony. And I was at New World Symphony with Tom, and Tom was on the committee that hired me because back then they actually had the percussion section
Right.
be the committee. So when I showed up there, I mean, Tom was already really together as a player and as a person, and so it was tough when we were doing mock auditions for each other because we were both going to the Chicago Symphony final round, and Tom won all the mock auditions. So I
Yeah.
learned a lot from him too.
Yeah.
So, hey, I know that everyone is curious about what we are giving away tonight. And Harrison Honor, the great Harrison Honor, would you be able to tell us what we're giving away? I know these are products by a guy named Freer. Are you there, Harry? Oh,
Yeah.
there you are.
Yes. So we are giving away well, Stephen would know too because Stephen made the list. So these are STK Perk certified.
That's right. These are your like go-to sticks and mallets that you would want to have that are essential from the Freer collection.
That's right.
So
That's very exciting.
we're doing the SMNT, the hybrid nylon tips, which I had nylon tips in high school, but I grew out of them. But it's cool to see that you're still into it.
These things right here.
Oh, those are good. Those are good. I want those.
KBLs, right? Those are pretty standard.
Yeah.
Glock, and then the KFG, which are the Glock mallets as well. And then we're doing a muffler too.
Yeah, snare drum muffler.
Yeah, I mean it's weird, it's his go-to pack, but it doesn't include the Tim Jennis go-to mallets. So I don't really know what to make of it.
Does Freer make those? How does that work?
He'd make him, DM him. He loves that.
I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
So we're built. Yeah. So that's our pack, right? That's our Freer pack that we're giving away tonight. That's very exciting. Um, let's see. By Casey, he's signing off. Isaac Fernandez Hernandez has entered the room, but he just showed up. So like, are we going to enter him in the raffle? Can you unmute Isaac?
Isaac's in there already. I put him in there.
He's in there?
Yeah, as soon as he came in, I added him.
Very
Wow,
good.
man. All right, Isaac, I'm rooting for you. You've helped me discover cryptocurrency, which is not going so well right now. I should mention.
What's
Um,
up, son?
there he is. Hey, why don't you say hello to our guest? You guys were in school together, right?
No, we coincided in Boston though. Steven was at
Same
NEC
time.
and I was at BU. Yeah, sorry, it's a little dark here. Sorry, I just got back from rehearsal, so
Hey,
that's why I'm
man.
listening. But
Glad you're here. Glad you're here.
Thanks for joining in.
Yeah.
yeah, of course.
So we're also giving away. So I should mention that I mentioned our fundraiser. Stephen Kehner generously donated to TAPS, and so we are forever thankful for your donation. By the way, any of you can donate if you so choose. I should mention that at any time during the year, and any amount is acceptable. We don't accept cryptocurrency yet, but we're working on that.
Yeah.
But I say all of this because Stephen came up with an idea of another donation to someone in the room, which I think we'll do that we'll do that raffle first if we can, Harrison. And this is related to some upcoming performances, which I believe are uh, um, not live performances. So maybe you can tell us about what's going on, Stephen.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to share my screen real quick here. Yeah, okay, so hopefully you guys are seeing that now. So this
Yeah.
season, the Oregon Symphony has been debuting some live stream concerts. This is not something that they used to do, but during the pandemic, they, as most ensembles have, realized that, live streaming is going to be a really important part of our model going forward, just to reach as big an audience as possible. And so these were live streaming a limited number of classical like subscription performances during the year, and there's one coming up in May that I'm especially excited about. So what I wanted to offer just as a giveaway is that I will get a live stream ticket for one lucky winner. And it's super simple. All that I'll need is your email address, and then it's going to send you a link, and you can watch the concert live. And then I think it's also available for like 7 to 10 days after the concert airs. So it's our concerts are at 7:30 Pacific time, so that's obviously pretty late for you East Coasters. So if you're not able to tune in live, you can watch it the next day and hop around and skip around in the concert. But this program is really, really cool. It's going to feature my colleague and our principal percussionist, Michael Roberts. And he's going to be playing Gabriella Smith's marimba kind of mini concerto, which is called Rip Rap. And then,
I know that one. That's a cool piece.
So that's going to be really, really cool. And Michael's going to sound great. He's a fantastic mallet player, if you guys haven't heard him. So that's going to be awesome. There's also some Wagner and Stefan Jakiv, I think, playing Schumann concerto on the first half. So really another fantastic soloist. And then we're going to be playing the De Rosenkavalier Suite on the second half.
Yeah.
So a pretty cool program. A lot of cool percussion stuff, especially with what Michael's got going on. He'll be at the front of the stage as a featured soloist. And so that should be really cool. So yeah.
Awesome.
Live stream ticket to that up for grabs.
Okay, well, let's do that now because that's going to be exciting. Now, the problem, Harry, when I'm looking at this wheel, and I will share this with all of you, is that it says taps Freer giveaway. So whoever wins this one, they're going to screenshot this and go, no, man, I want the mallets.
I think we have an upstanding group of taps fans that are not going to pull it over on us.
Wow, does everybody hear that? We're expecting a lot of you. Bear with me as I try and get my screens together here. I seem to have lost you guys. So, yeah, it's 2 years in, and I still can't figure out how to operate Zoom. Did you stop sharing your screen?
Yeah, I'm no longer sharing.
Oh, this is really fun. This is really fun. I'm just about everywhere right now. Hey, while I'm working on this, Stephen, we got a question from Instagram, which is, what's some advice that you can give to people coming from a program that is based on, education based or marching program, something unrelated to orchestra? What are some of the things that the pitfalls, and what are some of the things that are good about it?
Yeah. Well, I'm guessing that kind of refers back to what I was saying about me coming from Florida State, which is not necessarily an orchestral school. And if you're interested in taking orchestra auditions or a career path like that, it can feel like you don't really know what's going on if you're at a school that's mostly about marching band and music education, as FSU is. And I think, what I would say is that luckily now there's so many resources. There's so, online and in person, that you can get the instruction you would need to find out that information, to get the instruction on orchestral excerpts and techniques for the instruments and things like that. I mean, there's ways to watch, orchestra concerts from all over the world, the Berlin Philharmonic and all these U.S. orchestras that are doing live streams. You could tune in and watch those. That was a big part of my education, honestly, was just going to Boston Symphony concerts in grad school and just watching my teachers at work. I learned as much from that than I did in my lessons. that's a big one. I would just say go to concerts, watch concerts online as much as possible, because you'll learn so much, and your ears will start to get the sound of that playing going. So that is really key. And just don't despair that that the school you went to is like holding you back or something like that from what you really want to do. Not the case at all. Like, it's totally, people are successful coming from all sorts of different backgrounds and schools, and so yeah, it's all there for you to just take advantage of. So you got to do
And
that.
you can utilize the internet, YouTube, and the resources that are there for you to learn more about the
Yeah.
craft and about the music in particular. Speaking of which, okay, I'm gonna bring this wheel here up, and this is exciting. We're going to ignore the taps or the Freer giveaway. This is going to be for tickets to a virtual performance by the Oregon Symphony featuring Michael Roberts, the principal, and Stephen Kehner. All right, here we go. Our winner is Mario Perez. Kevin, I'm sorry, that was painful to watch. Man, I was rooting for you. Mario, congratulations. Let's make sure that you put if you would, put your email in the chat thread. And Harrison, if you can make sure that we hold on to Mario's information, and we'll take it from there. Congratulations. So, okay, well, we've got some questions. Luis is a little late to the party here, but he is concerned about this jersey in the background. You missed the discussion, but do you want to elaborate on this again, Stephen? So you can gloat.
Yeah. It's just my Ted and I were kind of chipping at each other over some English Premier League, and this is my Liverpool jersey here. It's a special one because it has the FIFA Club World Cup patch and the Premier League champion patch on it.
I remember that Champions League match somehow. There was a handball in the first minute, but the ball hit right here. Musa Sissoko was just trying to get his defenders in place. That was not a handball.
Ted,
No-
I'm curious,
no mono.
you got a jersey there. Does your jersey have those patches on it as well, or?
Oh, that's so cold. That's so cold. No, it doesn't, because I root for a loser. But we're climbing the mountain, Stephen. We're climbing the mountain. It's a journey.
On your way up.
Hey, Luis also wants to know how you balance your Premier League, she says, and your career. You found a way somehow.
Yeah, somehow. Like I said, I mean, the Premier League thing is just fun, and that's really took off during the pandemic. And the Oregon Symphony, just for some context, our whole entire season last year was canceled. I think it was just us and the Met Opera that happened to. I think everyone, aside from that, everyone else at least played something digitally or limited or did something. We did basically nothing for the entire, and that was just a strategy that the management just took on to try to conserve as much as possible and come back really strong this season. And like I said before at the beginning of the call, that's turned out to have worked pretty well. So I do have to give them credit for that. But it was pretty dark there for a year, just after winning the job, and then it's a total shutdown, and we lost an entire season. Unfortunately, it was also the last season of our departing music director Carlos Calmar, and that was that. He didn't get to really have his final season after a very long tenure here in Oregon. Luckily, he's music director laureate, and he'll be back at least once a season for the next few years. So yeah, now that work has started back up, I don't have as much time to tune into games when I'm in rehearsals and things like that. But
this is good for me. This is good for me. That means you won't be finding the best new call up for Brighton.
Exactly.
This is good. Okay, I like this. What is something that you learned? And obviously, I can't imagine what orchestra life is during COVID, but what is something you learned upon joining the orchestra that was surprising to you about orchestra life? Like I can give you an example. Like, I didn't realize when I joined the Chicago Symphony how involved I was going to become in like talking about committee related actions and understanding what contracts would look like for an entire orchestra, and how there's sometimes acrimony between management and musicians, and those committees have to meet. That's something for me. I mean, have you had some of those experiences, and what else has happened?
Yeah, no, I definitely know what you mean with that, and we have kind of periodic full orchestra Zoom calls to kind of go over all of those like committee related things and contract negotiations, which are going to be coming up for us as well. Luckily, I don't, I've kind of made a point to not get too involved with any of that, just as I'm starting out. I obviously I sit and listen. I'm learning a lot. I would say something that surprises me, knowledgeable about the inner workings of the contract and about, the business side of the orchestra, and, the aspects that management has to deal with. Coming out of, you don't learn any of that stuff in school, and you're not, exposed to it, and you don't understand the kind of behind the scenes workings of how an orchestra operates. So to kind of come into those meetings and hear how much my colleagues know about it, is like, I'm super grateful, because I'm like, wow, like they are super on top of this, and they're holding management accountable when they need to, and also, but they're also, it's a very nice community feel here, even across to the management too. It's very collaborative, and it's very productive. And so, yeah, I was surprised at how involved and how knowledgeable a lot of those people are. And it's going to take me a while to get there, because every meeting I'm like, okay, I don't know what that means. I need to go look that up, or what's this clause in the contract, or what's that, or all of these things. And so the work they're doing is amazing. And like I said, I have to credit them, because we haven't had not cancel a concert because of a breakout in the orchestra or things like that. It's been pretty smooth. So I feel like they've done a great job.
Yeah, yeah, it's a surprise to some people, but orchestra musicians are generally pretty smart people.
Yeah.
And yeah, I felt the same way when hearing my colleagues talk about contractual stuff. It was shocking, because I knew nothing about it, and it's something that
Yeah.
we don't really talk about in school at all.
Yeah.
And yet it becomes really important, especially these days, because every orchestra management is trying to figure out how and when we're going to get out of this pandemic, how to handle things during it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, the downside of all of it is that in a lot of cases, orchestra musicians have gotten the short end of the stick,
Yeah.
because of the pandemic. And I think that's true of most people in music that are performers.
Yeah.
My buddy playing Hamilton, they just shut down Hamilton in LA for the rest of the year. So
Yeah.
yeah, everyone's feeling it, and knowing what your rights are in the band, in the
Yeah.
orchestra, are pretty important.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's key.
Yeah, speaking of smart percussionists, all right, this guy, Tom Freer, he's got a bunch of really cool products, and he's always thinking about what to produce next. Casey Cangelosi is trying to win this stuff. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. If he does, I suggest that each of you start a riot in your domicile. Let's see. I think I shared the sound this time, because the sound of the wheel spinning is really cool. This is for the Freer pack that is selected specifically by Mr. Stephen Kehner. Here we go. You hearing that noise?
Wow.
Yeah, it's good, right? Oh no. It's it's I Chang Chi. Congratulations. Outstanding. Yeah. I'm grateful that it wasn't Greg LaRosa, who's basically our director of operations. That would reek of foul play. So, I Chang, if you would please put your email in the chat thread, and Harrison is going to take note of it, and we'll be in touch with you very soon. Congratulations. To the rest of you, I am terribly sorry, but we'll be giving away plenty more stuff over the course of this year. Um, Stephen, it's been a pleasure to speak with you. You were saying you didn't have any instruments. Now you've got a lot of instruments. What do you have back there?
Yeah, this, like I said, all started after leaving New World and realizing that I needed to get my hands on some keyboards and everything. So it was just a lot of, timpani and percussion swap shop, and things like that. Facebook Marketplace, all the kind of usual places to be able to find. And it was important to me to find things that were didn't. When you get to a certain point, practice instruments are great and definitely serve their purpose. But like when you're trying to prepare for a professional audition, like you need to play on something that's pretty similar to what, is at a professional level. So I've got an old Deegan there, a Musser Vibe. I do have a practice marimba. And I got a Glock. But yeah, a lot of it was like at one point, I think the xylophone, where it was somebody who was in LA, and it was just after I moved to Portland, and it was like, okay, I took a flight to LA, rented a car, back to Portland. Like sometimes that's just what you got to do.
Nice.
So that's how all of stuff that I practiced on leading up to my audition. I was already here. I was already living in Portland before the audition was posted. I had moved here already, so yeah, this was my setup and this is what I was doing. And thing that was honestly was an advantage was just being in town and being on my instruments and not having any restriction on, how much time I could spend in the practice room or what hours of the day I could be there. It's in my house on my gear, like that, that can be a little bit of a game changer. So
Was your practice routine kind of similar to what you've described in the past? I mean, could you get more intense because you were at home?
Yeah, I think so. And I also think I kept a better balance, or I was like more productive being at home. Just like I said, being right here. When I first started prepping, I was just freelancing. And so a lot of times I didn't have anywhere to be. You wake up and you don't have a gig, like the day is yours, so you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
And but my wife was working and she was getting up pretty early and leaving at like 7:30 a.m. to go to work. And at first I was kind of annoyed. I was like, I don't really need to go anywhere today. Like I'm sort of annoyed that I'm also waking up at this time. Like I could be, but then I quickly adjusted and realized that like, I could kind of use this time. I could, so I just kind of changed my entire schedule. And a lot of mornings, 8 a.m., like I had already had breakfast. I was already a cup of coffee and I was in the studio, like warming up on the pad. And when like noon hit and it was lunchtime and I'd already spent 4 hours shedding, it was like, wow, this feels pretty good.
Yeah.
Now I can I maybe would take a break and go to the gym or go do something else in the afternoon and then maybe come back to a few things in the late afternoon, evening. Like,
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, it's impressive. Yeah, especially when you can get that much done before noon.
Yeah. Yeah, Tim Jennis used to practice 6 hours before 10 a.m., Harrison said.
I was just going to say that, man. You're not even close to Tim Jennis. He was up at like 4 a.m. doing stuff. Well, man, it's been great to talk to you, and I'm glad things are going so well. It sounds like the orchestra is in really good shape right now. So,
yeah, thank you.
Listen, please tell Michael Roberts I play really good tam-tam. If he ever needs like a fourth tam-tam player, I'd love to get up there. I've never been there.
Oh, yeah.
And I hear it's like the coolest town in America.
Yeah, I love it here. That'd be great. Definitely need to play some notes together for sure.
Man, that would be outstanding. In the meantime, come on, you Spurs. Except for Trent Alexander-Arnold, who I want to get as many assists and goals as he would like for my fantasy purposes. Man, Stephen, I can't wait to see you in person one of these days. And thanks a lot for doing this.
Yeah, of course. And thanks to everybody for being here too. And I'll, throw another, a recommendation out there to definitely apply to TAPS this summer. It sounds like an awesome program. The faculty lineup looks killer. Do you guys have John Greeny?
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Our timpanist here in Oregon. Awesome guy. Fantastic. So yeah, definitely get applications in for that and go to LA with these guys because it's going to be.
Are you applying, Stephen?
I mean, I should. Our summers are off. I might need to snag one of those spots.
It's free housing. Something to consider.
You do toddlers as well? Toddlers?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We're all about it here. Yeah, my boys are almost old enough to be babysitters. They're 6. Would you trust two 6-year-old twin boys that are last name is Atcats?
Maybe more than 40 something, one cat's named Ted, I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
well, there you go. There you go. I like the numbers you're using too. Yeah, you're making me even younger. It's great.
There you go.
Hey, everybody, thank you. It's great to see so many familiar names. I'd love to see your faces next time. We have Parker Lee in 2 weeks from the Metropolitan Opera. He's principal timpanist. So, and after that, we'll be meeting with Leo Soto. That'll be in February. So stay tuned, stay connected with us, and thank you for joining. Stephen, see you soon, man.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. See you.
Yeah.